The whole thing was built around filling in a gap for talent that needed a space. I was doing workout groups in my studio. We're actually in the 11th year of our workout group, which is insane, the G Street workout group. And it really started from people who were like, hey, I've been coming to your workout group for the last year. I finally booked a job. Can I come record at your studio? So I know the place. And I was like, I don't see why not. Like, how much would you charge? I'm like, I don't know. Buy me like some lunch and we'll be fine. And literally is how it started. And so as people came in, the studio was built around what people needed. So somebody would come in, they were like, hey, can you do Source Connect for sound? I'm like, I don't know what Source Connect is, but let me get it. Somebody would come in and say, hey, do you have ISDN? I'm like, well, I don't know what ISDN, but let me get it. A week later, I'd have ISDN. And somebody would come in and say, hey, I need a 416. I'm like, okay, well, if I buy a 416, will you book the session here? Type thing. If I have that, you kind of build it and they will show up, build it, they will come. But it was really built around the needs of the community.
Are you saying there was no business plan?
There was absolutely no business plan whatsoever. No. I don't do plans. I don't do plans at all. I hate plans.
No, you're just filling hundreds of little micro needs and building a business around it. That
it's all those
familiar.
little things. Yeah, exactly.
Familiar,
George the Tech.
Hey everybody, it's George the Tech, back in our long and running series of Trusted Partner profile interviews. And this is a person who will be no stranger to anybody who's already active and working in the voiceover field. And if he is new to you, you are in for a treat, because this man has an incredible skill set of different areas he has become an expert in, but he's also helped build an organization that is really going to change the lives of voice actors, possibly even actors in general. So without further ado, let's get into it here today with Mr. Tim Friedlander. How you doing, Tim?
Good. How you doing? Good to be here.
I'm great.
Awesome.
Great. Thanks for joining me. We're both taking time out of our busy day, so these are such awesome moments to sit down and talk in a way that we never get to. And you and I always laugh at how we spend more time just chewing the fat, talking out of LA than we do in, right?
Yep. And then we never see each other in LA. It takes forever to or if we do, it's like once a year in LA, and then we never cross paths, and then we see
it. And it's because you host a big party, for your birthday or something, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so true. I guess that's just kind of the life of working in Los Angeles and in the business, because the things coming at you every day, it's an onslaught of needs and wants and people demanding of your input and email and on, right? It's very difficult to really set aside time to just be and hang out with a friend, right?
No, it's tough. I mean, but that's kind of the nature of LA too. And I guess it's also kind of the nature of why I came to LA in the first place, which was specifically to work. I came for the opportunities and the work that was here. And not to say that I'm trying to be antisocial, but I think there's a lot of people who come to LA specifically to focus on the craft and the things that they're doing. And that kind of does tend to create a very isolated type of environment for a lot of people, I think.
From the outside, LA is Santa Monica Beach, it's Venice Beach, it's Hollywood, it's Disneyland, it's a recreational place.
Yeah.
But the reality is the people that really do live here, on the whole, are here to hustle. They work very hard.
Yeah.
It's a very hard city to remain in, having been here 21 years myself. When did you land in Los Angeles?
I'm going on 22.
Holy dude, you were right there with me.
October of 2002.
Wow. Holy cow. Well, we have a confined amount of time, as always, to talk today, and that's the bummer. But give me a little background. So what led you up to being in Los Angeles, and what made you come here to pursue voiceover, music, and everything else?
That's a good question. I came out of, I was a few years out of college, and I was a musician. And in the early 2000s, if you wanted to be a musician, you had to be in New York or LA. Possibly Nashville or Austin. Austin was kind of coming up at that time. But I'm from Seattle, so the straight shot down the coast to LA was an obvious choice. I always say, I've told the story multiple times, but I literally had no plan. My lease was up on a Sunday. I threw my stuff into a U-Haul and drove to LA and ended up in LA on a Wednesday. And I called my dad. I was like, hey, I just got to LA. He was like, oh, that's nice. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm gonna live here. I mean, they knew I was going, but it was like, oh, that's cool. So how's it going? I was like, well, I don't know anybody. I don't have a job. I don't have a house. Do you know anybody that I could call and crash on their couch for a while? And I called up a couple of my dads.
You had even less of a plan than I did.
I had no plan whatsoever. My dad was a drama teacher, so we had a bunch of students that would come up and down, go to LA for pilot season and stuff like that. And so he had friends who were students who were down here. I crashed on their couch for 2 weeks, and then I moved into the house that I'm living in now. And I've been in the same house. I moved into Gardner Street.
Are you kidding me?
Moved into Gardner Street on October 15th, 2002, and I am still here.
That is wild.
Yeah.
That I'm learning about for the first time. I had no idea that you've been in the same address from day one. I think I'm on address number 6.
Yeah.
5 or 6.
I mean, it's part of the reason why I was able to build the studios the way that I did is because I was literally living in my studio and rent controlled in Hollywood in a place that I been tried to build the studios from I want to build a studio.
Commercial property
would
rental,
no,
blah, blah, blah.
not have worked. But rent control, and props to my landlord. It was his mom's house in the 80s. It's a family property. It's not a corporate landlord. It's a duplex. His son and his daughter-in-law live on one side. I live on the other. So it's a real family place, and he's happy that I'm here to take care of the place. And so, it's worked out really well. The reason why this place exists is because of the fact that we've had rent control in Hollywood and had a really great landlord who I've known him for 20 some years, he's family. Yep. And that goes a long way in this town. When
you started out, was the goal from the get-go to have a studio in home? Or is it just you're a musician, that's what you do? First thing you do.
You always have a studio. I mean, I was recording, I'm literally spent the last week pulling out like old DAT tapes and cassettes from the 90s where I would, the first solo album I did was on like a mixer that I had routed into my tape player so I could get reverb and multi-tracking on a tape player.
So it was just direct to tape, like direct to 2-track?
Just direct to cassette. Yeah. In my bedroom. And then I've always had, some kind of home studio in some capacity. So, I moved down here with microphone and amps and guitars and recording equipment and stuff like that. But it was never an intention to open a studio. It was more of an intention to provide a place. I always just wanted a place to have like-minded people around and be a creative atmosphere. That's really what I wanted. I wanted a place, and I couldn't find it, or I didn't find it at least, and so I kind of built it.
Yeah, you built what you needed.
Yeah.
Let's flash back one more time because it's just fun. What was your first multi-track recording technology that you had? That was your very own.
The very first thing I had a Sony hi-fi system, like with the tape deck and a 5-channel mixer.
The stacks?
The stacks, yeah. A little bit of like a small one, like a little shelf one. Yep.
Yeah.
And then I had a Tapco mixer. So Tapco, which I still have in the garage. Tapco was pre-Mackie. Tapco became Mackie. And it was an old mixer with reverb built into it. So I could plug in multiple, it was 6 channels. So I could plug in 6 microphones and run that directly into this like bookshelf unit. And so I could multi-track. I could mic up my guitar. I could sing on the vocals. I could do all that at the same time. You couldn't go back and track over it afterwards, but I could set up multiple mics and get pretty decent sound of it. I did one solo album in the 90s and I lost the tape. I gave the tape. I really wish I had it. I gave it to a magazine to review it, and they brought it back and they left it on my steps and under the doormat. And I remember seeing it. I have no idea where that tape went. I had
physically lost.
Had one copy of that.
One copy.
One copy of it.
Well, you never did that again.
Oh no, never done that again. So
let's send them the only master gold copy of the entire thing.
Yeah, I have the review, but I don't have the actual album.
Did you ever dabble in reel-to-reel, or did you kind of like go straight into digital after that?
No, I was just post reel-to-reel. We did like our first album. We hired a studio when I was in Seattle in '94. I believe we recorded on reel-to-reel, and then the master they gave us was bounced down to DAT. So I have the DAT master, but I don't have the reel-to-reel.
Do you still have a machine to play back that DAT?
I bought, actually, you can see it right behind me, right there. Is a DAT player. I bought 2 of those at an auction. They're only 2 tracks, so I actually want to get an 8-track DAT player so I can actually remix this album I did in the 90s.
Oh, do you have an ADAT?
I have an ADAT also. Yeah. An ADAT as well. Yep.
I love that, man. And then from there, you transitioned to DAWs, I would imagine. And
yeah.
Were you early Pro Toolser?
I was Nuendo for a long time.
Oh, Nuendo. Oh, the very first studio I set up for somebody else commercially, wasn't my own thing, was built on Nuendo version 1 because he was a Windows guy.
That's what I was on a Windows. I didn't know Mac, so I went with the Sony Vaio system, went with Nuendo. And this was back in, 2000. So I can't afford to spend $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 something. So everybody was just cracking and stuff. Like you had a friend who had a cracked version on something, and because you had no idea what was going to work. So I went to that, and then I was on Fruity Loops for the first version of Fruity Loops.
My cousin still teaches kids how to use Fruity Loops in his media class in high school. They love it. Yeah,
that's awesome. And then Rewire when it was like a virtual patch bay when you could do all that stuff. Yeah. And then I ended up on Digital Performer for a long time. I was on Digital Performer for years.
Yeah, okay.
Before going to Logic, and then because of Joe Cipriano. I'm actually on Pro Tools because of Joe Cipriano.
No kidding.
And I learned Pro Tools because of that. I was at Randy Thomas's event, her conference she did a couple years in a row, and the engineer didn't show up to run Joe Cip's class. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. I'm probably just somebody to show me how to show me how to set it up. I think it was called Media City Sound. And I literally was like Googling how to create a track in Pro Tools. And I had never used Pro Tools. They were like, oh yeah, we have our engineer here, he'll help you. And he went in, he opened up Pro Tools for me. He's like, cool, have fun. And I was like, no, I don't, where do I put this? Like, how do I save something? And I was able to create a single track and record. And he was trying to do to picture. So not only that, he just gave me a thumb drive. And so I did a crash course in Pro Tools and we pulled it off. But
trial
then from
by fire,
trial
baby.
by
That's
fire.
how we, yeah.
Yep. But then from that point on, I was like, you know what? I need to know Pro Tools. And I've been on Pro Tools ever since. So I go back and forth Pro Tools and then Logic if I'm doing music. Primarily,
Gotcha.
That stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel the same way about Mac. Like I was on Windows until I moved to LA and I built PCs and I was using WaveLab and all this stuff. And then so many of my clients here are on Mac, and I was like, I got to buy a Mac. Bought my first Mac Mini in like 2006 maybe.
Okay.
And just spent a year or so kind of making the transition and really went all in, and then after that, it was just never looked back. But yeah, of course with DAWs for me, I'm trying to fix, all Swedish cars, whatever it is, I need how to fix Volvos and, I guess I'll fix some German cars too.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that one's from Japan. Okay, I'll fix that. So it's like, but I've also learned what I don't know and what my limits are,
Yeah.
So
exactly.
That's why I've got great people like yourself. And that's something I didn't mention, you guys, is that the reason Tim's here today for this interview is not only is he doing so many other great things we're going to get to, but Tim is also a member of our tech team and is one of our specialists who can navigate the waters of Pro Tools, Logic, and the Apollo as well.
Yeah.
So when did you get into the Apollo?
That's a good question. I went from Apogee into like a Yamaha 6-channel interface. No, a Behringer. I think it was a Behringer. It didn't sound very good. And then I finally, as we got into like having clients come into the studio, it was just time to upgrade. So I went to an 8-channel. Needed something that could handle drums primarily, which was the goal.
An 8-channel, an 8-channel Apogee interface?
8-channel Apollo.
Got you.
Man, I've been on Apollos ever since, and that was, 2016 or so. It was really one of the first kind of like real pieces of gear that I got for the studio. I've never looked back. It's been, it's such a ubiquitous sound that you can get, and it works. It's very versatile for music and voiceover, and we've built all of our studios around the Apollo ecosystem. So any of our studios that we have, we all have the same workflow. We have the same capabilities so that you can go to different studios and know that you can get the same sound and stuff like that.
So we'll step back one step again because this is, the way our brains work.
Right.
We're talking we. There's a we here. It's not just about you, right? So that's SoundBox.
GTT. Not sure if your studio's audio sounds competitive? A sound check by George the Tech removes all doubts and explains the next steps. Audiobooks, podcasts, voiceovers. For content creators, we do it all. New customers get 20% off their first service with a coupon code on your screen.
George the Tech.
Yeah, SoundBox, we have, including your space that we have, which I know we would like to utilize more.
We are slowly ramping up.
Ramping up. We have 7 facilities. We've got 5 in LA, and then we've got Boston and Nashville as well. And the whole thing was built around filling in a gap for talent that needed a space. I was doing workout groups in my studio. We're actually in the 11th year of our workout group, which is insane, the G Street workout group. And it really started from people who were like, hey, I've been coming to your workout group for the last year. I finally booked a job. Can I come record at your studio? So I know the place. And I was like, I don't see why not. Like, how much would you charge? I'm like, I don't know. Buy me like some lunch and we'll be fine. And literally is how it started. And so as people came in, the studio was built around what people needed. So somebody would come in, they were like, hey, can you do Source Connect for sound? I'm like, I don't know what Source Connect is, but let me get it. Somebody would come in and say, hey, do you have ISDN? I'm like, well, I don't know what ISDN, but let me get it. A week later, I'd have ISDN. And somebody would come in and say, hey, I need a 416. I'm like, okay, well, if I buy a 416, will you book the session here type thing? If I have that, you kind of build it and they will show up, build it, they will come. But it was really built around the needs of the community.
Are you saying there was no business plan?
There was absolutely no business plan whatsoever. No. I don't do plans. I don't do plans at all. I hate plans.
No, you're just filling hundreds of little micro needs and building a business around it. That
it's all those
familiar.
little things. Yeah, exactly. And I think it worked really well because we weren't trying to go in to be and I still don't go anywhere to try and be competition. If there's like Nashville needed a space that was just VO specific, same thing in Boston. There's been some turnover with the studios in Boston, and some of the VO friendly spaces are no longer there. So
there's
we
just not a stability. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're just closing doors and
Yeah.
changing hands and yeah.
But it was really interesting. We had a talent in here last week, and I was walking him through the setup in the booth, and the first thing he said was like, yep, you can tell that this booth was built by a voiceover talent. It's got everything you would ever need in the booth from the talent side of things. And so everything that I would want in the booth is there. So I can go in and say, great, here is your, you have a mixer. You can separate your beeps. You can separate from the remote talent, from the director, from the desk, from yourself. And you have full control over your own mix in the booth, which as a talent, I really want.
So rare
right?
to see that in a voiceover booth, right? I mean,
Never
if you're
happens.
lucky as a voiceover, you have a headphone knob
Exactly,
in most
yeah.
commercial studios, right?
Yeah. And I wanted that for myself, right? I want to have that. I want to be able to control the beeps in a session. I want to be able to turn the director down on Zoom if they're coming in too loud. I want to be able to turn the director up in the studio if they're too quiet. And all of those things are built around trying to be efficient and save time. 10 minutes that you spend trying to get a mix in the booth for a talent so they can hear everything is you've now got 45 minutes left in an hour-long session. And those 10 minutes sometimes are the make and break of what you had just exactly the right amount of time. And you're working with a union talent, you're going right up to the hour. You don't have sometimes 5 or 10 minutes to waste trying to get a mix correct or do something like that. So being aware of all of that from the production side, from the talent side, from the producer side and engineer side really allows me to build a space that is hopefully friendly and usable for everybody. Efficient. And efficiency is really a big part of the game these days.
No doubt. So. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to pull this thing out of my pocket and hold it up because I get yelled at for doing these shows and never promoting anything. Okay, so this is my chance to talk about Passport.
Nice. Yes.
The exact concept of what you are describing and everything being in one place for the voice actor to be able to control what they need to hear in their headphones.
Yeah.
That's the whole design philosophy around Passport, right?
Yep.
There's these middle dials right here are all about what you hear. Actually, everything from here down is about what you hear as the actor.
Yeah.
Not the top two are gain. The rest is monitoring control, right?
Yeah.
So this one is controlling record playback blend. So when you want to edit and not hear yourself mouth breathing into the microphone while you're editing, you turn that to the right. Now you're only hearing record. This knob over here is calm. So that's the return from the studio. So that's their talkback or the beeps.
Yep.
You can turn that down. Everything's separated in one little tiny package. And the beauty of this is beyond the functionality, the user's usability, there is no compromise in sound quality.
Yeah.
We have really shot this thing out against some very high-end preamps and gear. In fact, I just got a file today from Andrew Peters, who's one of the four of us who helped design this, and he has the gear. He is a gear head. So he's got the Neves and the SSLs and he's got it all. And we're doing shootouts and this thing punches right up there with the top end stuff. So just go over to centrance.com/passportvo.
Nice.
And there are still a handful left from the initial batch that we had produced. So thanks for reminding me without meaning to. This is why things like this get made, because people like Tim and me are here to fill gaps for you guys as actors and talent and make you feel incredibly comfortable with what you're doing and your gear, right? Isn't that what it's all about for actors?
I mean, absolutely. And that's one of the biggest things I think we've tried to do with all of our spaces and make a place that you feel comfortable being exposed and performing, which you really are. I mean, you are literally in a fishbowl under a microscope as a talent. And that's an uncomfortable place to be. And if you're I've been in plenty of spaces where the sound wasn't right or the space felt weird or it was too cold or it was too hot. I mean, all those little things may seem like, I'll just power through it. But those things affect your performance. And for people who are working all the time or people who are new and they go in and they're at first time with a client, first time in a session, first time. A lot of times people coming into my studio are the first time in a studio that's outside of their own house. So how can we make this something that you feel comfortable in? Make it your own. Feel comfortable. Sit down. Do you want to stand? Do you want a chair? Do you want a tall chair? Do you want a short chair? Do you want the stand to be here? Feel free to move that around. I think it's one of the things that digress slightly is talent being aware that they can advocate for themselves in a session and that they should advocate for themselves because it gives you the best chance to be the best performance you can. And in the end, you're going to give the producer, the client, the best thing they can get. You're going to get that job again. And don't be afraid to say, I'm sorry, can you turn that up a little bit? You can turn that down. My microphone is too loud. My microphone is too quiet. Can I take off one side of my headphones? Can I have a chair to sit down in? Hey, do you mind if I get a cup of hot tea in here? Because I know this is going to be a long session. Can you turn the air conditioning off? Can you turn the AC on? All of those things. Every single thing I have in here is like, do you want the AC on? Do you want a chair? Would you like water? Do you want tea halfway through the session? Is that microphone okay where it is? Or would you prefer to have it off to the side?
Yeah.
Is the script okay? Would you like the script to be taller or lower? And every single time, I guarantee almost every single, I would say, I'll start keeping track of this, but every time somebody says, oh, it's fine, and I adjust they stand, they always say, oh, great, that's much better, thank you.
They are trained to not speak up for themselves.
Yes.
They're trained well, first, what's the first thing they're always told not to do?
Don't touch the microphone.
Don't touch the microphone.
Which is valid. It's
still valid. But unfortunately, what happens is that the whole mindset of don't touch the microphone then sort of translates into don't speak up, don't complain. You're paid very well to be here.
Yep.
You're part of a machine. You're just a cog in a machine. Just do your job. Don't be annoying. And that ends up being like so anti-talent, and it's just not cool. It's anti-human. It's like these are humans doing very, very human things.
Yeah. And you're not going to get the best performance. The best performances are from people who are relaxed and focused and able to concentrate on what they're there to do, which is to be the actor in that space. And which is, again, to slightly digress, one of the things that's been so difficult about the last 4 or 5 years with COVID is that you have a lot of people who don't have the experience that many of us have to be engineers and talent and are having to try and navigate that. It's frustrating. It's confusing. It is hard. It is difficult if you're in the middle of a session and you're like, I need to adjust the volume, and you have to figure out how to go out to your booth and adjust the volume and go back in and test it. All of those little things that many people have had to learn over the last 5 years have affected performances and have affected mindsets and how people react when they get into a space. Every single time for the last 4 years, unless I absolutely have to, I won't do a session at home. I will always go to somebody else's studio every single time.
Your guys' minds are probably blown right now, right?
Yeah.
This man has built himself a beautiful studio, comfortable, has everything a voice actor can need. But that is what he's chosen to do.
Yeah. I don't want to deal with gain. I don't want to deal with a cable crackling. I don't want to deal with something happening. I want to be there to do my job so I can do the best job I can as the voice actor. And then you come into my studio and I will do the best job as an engineer to make sure every single thing is accounted for and prepared, and you have the best experience you can as a talent. Every single time I book with an agent, I say, can I go into the studio? And I go into the studio. And I don't care if it's an hour drive, it's a 2-hour drive. I will drive where I need to be in that space with all the people doing their jobs the best that they can.
Man, that is huge. I mean, that just says a lot. I totally can feel you. Like, I can only imagine, well, I don't have to imagine. Doing these interviews, I told you before we hit record, how frustrating the technology is and how distracting it is when it doesn't work. As an actor being paid to create a character out of whole cloth or just do this role. And if you're recording yourself, and I can tell you right now, my own personality is if there was some tech issue that was mid-session while I'm in the thing, I would get fucking angry.
Yeah.
Like I would be like, God.
And that becomes your focus.
Yeah, it would totally, ADHD brain stuff, man. That would send me off on a tangent. Now I'd be out looking to see what's going on. Then I would realize that, it's not the cable, it's the connector or the adapter that's on this thing. And then I'd be on Amazon going, I should have bought one of those anyway.
Right.
It's like nightmare, right? So that's such a brilliant social engineering kind of a thing that you figured this out. I don't engineer myself. I act, I produce, and I advocate, which we'll get to NAVA in a minute.
Yeah.
But these are set, you compartmentalize these things.
I and that's kind of allowed me to do the things that I do. I know if I'm in engineer mode, this is my area of expertise for engineer. I need to do this.
And you entertain. I forgot to mention entertain.
I perform.
Jeez, I forgot.
But one of the things I think to touch real briefly on is, the speed at which voiceover works. You don't always have the opportunity to burn a take.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're engineering your own session.
As Miles Davis said in his 50s, what do you mean you didn't record that take?
Yeah.
You rehearse every time you play on the instrument.
Yep. and I try and make sure that, I pride myself in the fact that I don't think I've ever lost a take from somebody, we've been able to salvage it. If there's a gain issue, we redo it. You can fix it. But, it's nothing like doing a great performance and the take is not usable, because sometimes, actors are great at recreating, but every once in a while you get that lightning in a bottle moment that is just the most perfect. You encapsulated that performance. And I'll tell you a story. This actually was actually at another studio. Mind blown. It was a large facility, but booths weren't soundproof. And I was in the middle of doing a scene. I was doing a dubbing scene, and I was playing the father on his deathbed, and I was literally in tears, and you could hear the dog barking in the hallway, and we lost the take. So from that side,
was this like a commercial recording facility, or like part of a television?
It was a large recording facility.
Gotcha.
But that just goes, like that. I have very specific, like ideas about what my booth should sound like. I don't want to hear people. I shouldn't be able to hear a dog barking in the hallway. I shouldn't be able to hear something coming through the walls. And now we're talking quality over quantity. So they have a lot of spaces, but not very high quality spaces. And all of our studios are one booth facilities, and they are not as perfectly tuned as we could get, but that one space is optimized for exactly what we need to never lose a take, to not hear outside noise, to not hear somebody, down below or above or whatever it is.
It's category bending, because I know in studios, right, there's either commercial studios, home studios.
Yeah.
Now there's sort of a project studio middle ground, but I wouldn't even call what you're describing a project studio.
No.
It's still a commercial studio, but a personalized commercial studio. It's like it's a commercial studio quality and experience on an extremely personal one-on-one level where that's a really cool, unique thing about SoundBox. I didn't really think of it that way. You guys, it's one booth, one facility.
One booth, one facility, and when you're on the ground, you are the only talent in the entire space. So during COVID, we were the first studio to get approval from the state, the city, and the county, and SAG-AFTRA to open before every other studio in California, partially because of the isolation that we had in the facility. We were a single booth.
Right.
So, that
no receptionist, no janitor.
Nope. Nope. You're not going to pass another talent in the hallway. You're not going to run into somebody in the bathroom. So we work a lot with high-profile clients they will come in and they'll take the entire day. They'll crash out on the couch. They'll order lunch. They'll do a photo shoot outside. They'll maybe use the house to do makeup in front before they go to a red carpet event type thing that we give that entire space for somebody to use. And it becomes a very boutique, safe space for people to be in. And I think really, safe, comfortable space is really kind of what all of our goal is, so.
Oh, I love that. Well, out of COVID, from COVID, then we start dealing with a new COVID called AI.
Yeah, yes.
In the time we have left, which is nowhere near enough, you started NAVA.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Give us what was the initial trigger point? Because it wasn't AI.
No, it wasn't AI.
What was the initial trigger to start NAVA? Tell us about it.
It was a combination of kind of funds we had been doing fundraising. Myself and Karen Gilfrey, who's our vice president, she had a group in New York called Voice Actors at NYC. I had a group in LA here, which was the voiceover collective, which became the Gardner Collective when Jay Preston stepped aside and I took over. And we had spent a lot of time during COVID taking donations and giving out financial aid to people. And all of that had been going through both of our personal accounts. So we were taking in and giving out $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. And we were like, we're already doing this. Maybe it would make sense to try and put this into a nonprofit so that we could get it off of our books. Because, I'm paying taxes on that money coming in. I'm paying money on all of that going out. We were dealing with the financial
giant tax mess. Huge tax mess. Oh my God.
It was but it had to be done, right? I mean, it was something that needed to be done. We were the people to facilitate that.
Instead of going, we're not going to do this as a tax headache, moving on, you're like, no, this has to be done. We're going to do it.
We did it, and then we dealt with the issues, the ramifications of it later.
Yeah.
And it wasn't terrible, but we're like, if we're going to do this and if we want to grow this, then we should probably put this into a nonprofit. And if we're going to put it into a nonprofit, what do we offer for a nonprofit? And then I said, wow, and I had nothing to follow it up with. But during COVID, SAG-AFTRA's healthcare plans changed, and they got rid of the eligibility requirements changed. First, they had two levels of healthcare. In the first tier, the lowest tier, if you earned around $17,000 a year, you'd qualify for one level of healthcare. If you earned about $24,000, you'd qualify for the higher tier. they eliminated the lower tier and made the level of requirement much higher, $26,000 to $27,000 now.
Sounds like they pulled up the ladder.
So it was very tough. It was, it was the reality of, unfortunately, economics of the situation. The health plans are based on people working. And if nobody's working, money's not going in. And how do you maintain the ability to provide health care for those who qualified? So, you can have your opinion about whether it was right or wrong or could have been avoided or not avoided. The reality is that it happened. It wasn't a decision that I don't think was made lightly. It was a decision many people don't agree with and were definitely hurt by. So then we were like, I wonder if there's a way to offer healthcare to an association. And surprisingly, one of the things that came out of the administration that was in office from 2016 to 2021 was that they eased the requirements for associations to offer healthcare to their members. And so we spent about 2 years working on trying to find an option that would allow us to provide healthcare to our members. We had 87 or 88 rejections, and we had one yes. And once we got that yes, we decided that we had what we needed to offer something that would, again, not be competition, but fill in a need and a void that existed in the industry, which is where we tried to fit ourselves in. And so, we're actually coming up on our 3rd year anniversary of our announcement. We announced at VO Atlanta in 2022. We announced the morning that we got our LLC papers approved. And so we were like, okay, we got approved. Let's say we're going to do this thing. We didn't have healthcare. We said we were going to do healthcare, but we also said we were going to make our best effort. And if we fail, at least we will have failed trying to make this happen. If we succeed, it's going to be amazing. And so, we did succeed and we got healthcare. We launched in November of 2022 with access to national healthcare plan for all of our members. And anybody who joined after 30 days, like with a business, after 30 days, you can then just sign up for the healthcare plan. There's no earning requirements. There's nothing else needed. And so we launched right away. I'm personally on the healthcare. I'm on the plan myself. So is Matthew, who's our director of operations. We've got 150 members or so on the plan. And we offer, there's 8 different levels of healthcare that you can get through us, including vision and dental and pet and life insurance and auto insurance. All those things you can get through NAVA now. We've expanded our offerings as we've gone through the last few years. But as soon as we launched in November of 2022, Apple Audiobooks announced their AI audiobooks. And we all of a sudden were like, wait, what is this thing? I think this is going to be a problem for voice actors. Kind of sat on it for a few months. And then in February of 2023, coming back from vacation, there was a weekend where 13 or 14,000 audio files from voice actors showed up on a website called Fake You and another website called UberDuck. And we were like, okay, this is a huge problem now. This is something that is not just a theoretical, but is something.
This is a form of identity theft.
Yeah. So identity theft, IP theft, copyright
Likeness,
theft, biometric
on and on.
data. Yeah. And we jumped directly into that conversation. And I'm actually doing a panel at One Voice UK called From the Garage to the UN, how NAVA became a player on the global stage around AI, I think is what we're calling it. So
and it was pretty much like a 1-year span of time?
By February of 2023 and by November of 2024, we'd had 35 meetings on Capitol Hill with lawmakers on that. We jumped right in. We got a firm to help us get access. We got a lobbying firm. We got lawyers. We put ourselves directly into that conversation.
Wow.
Because you had, Chat GPT, you had 11 Labs, you have Murph.ai, you have a lot of companies showing up that are using voice actors' voices to create their platforms. Some ethically, some not ethically, some licensed, some not licensed. And so, we wanted to look at this not from an AI regulation standpoint, but from an American rights standpoint and a human rights standpoint, which is that we should have the right to own the protections over our voice, image, name, and likeness. And that's been our pursuit for the last, going on 2 years now. We've now had over 80 meetings with senators and congresspeople and politicians on a federal level. We helped write the voice amendment for the EU AI Act in 2022. With another group we started in my spare time called United Voice Artists, which is a global coalition of voice acting associations. I presented to the UN twice now on these concerns. We are now helping set global AI policy for voice associations.
Wow.
It's just, it's nuts. And we're going, shortly after this interview is recorded, we're actually going to Sacramento. We're co-sponsoring our first bill. And we're going to speak at a press conference in Sacramento at the introduction of this bill alongside SAG-AFTRA and the Concept Art Association. So it's sponsored by SAG-AFTRA, National Association of Voice Actors, and Concept Art Association. We're the three sponsors of the bill. And that's what we've done in 2.5 years to that point.
It's fantastic.
It's insane.
I mean, it really is amazing. And it's because of the dues, right? Is that how you're able to make this happen?
The membership dues and donations, yeah. Membership dues pay for that. NAVA is a 501c3 and a 501c6. Nonprofits can't do lobbying unless they're a 501c6. So we have a lobbying arm, which is the 501c6. And that's what travels and goes and works on these things. And then we have the 501c3, which handles the donations, the Brad Venable Scholarship, the scholarships we're doing to VO Atlanta, financial aid, legal
you guys,
aid,
we don't even have
resources.
close to the amount of time to really get in. I mean, we could talk for a half hour about Brad Venable. We could talk for a half hour about like all these different initiatives and everything. And we wouldn't even, we still wouldn't get through it all. And that's the shame of the format of this little interview, but maybe that gives us more opportunities for you and I to talk. But it is fantastic. And just, I'm really blown away with what you've accomplished. It's so amazing. It is no small feat to last 20 plus years in Los Angeles. I'm telling you from my own personal experience.
For sure.
And that not that you've only just survived, but now with all these new things, it's clearly you're thriving too. And that is just freaking awesome. I'm just blown away. Really.
It's not an easy town to do either of those things in.
No.
But we're here and doing it. So
where do we direct people that want to know more about NAVA and maybe possibly join themselves?
Yeah, NAVAvoices.org. And then SoundBox is soundbox.la. So you can find those too. NAVAvoices.org has all the information on the front page. All the membership stuff is there. Healthcare info is there. So you can take a look at the healthcare prior to that. But, all of those things are just little small components of the totality of what NAVA is. So, there's free classes every month. There's legal aid resources. Rob Siglin-Paglia will do contract reviews for people. We have financial aid if you need it. We have a Cal Fire Fund, which you've helped
and you got involved with the VAs for LA.
VAs for LA.
You got involved with that.
Yep. We've been providing equipment and gear for talent who lost it in the fire. And this is still open. So if you're listening to this and you still have needs, you can go to NAVAvoices.org and find the information there.
As long as this video is out, likely people are still going to have needs.
Yeah. We've given out about $20,000 in just direct financial aid to voice actors, and a large amount of gear has gone out. The community stepped up and donated a bunch of equipment. So we've been handling that. And
I got to do that. It was so cool. I got to literally hand to an actor, acoustical panels and a mic and just send her off on her way.
Yeah. And, no obligation. People have donated it. And, we're not loaning somebody a microphone for 6 months and asking for it back. We'll give them the equipment. They get to keep it and hopefully use it to rebuild their studio, their life. I mean,
a way to resume earning, which is so important,
exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Gosh,
Absolutely.
man. Well, I can't imagine. I can't imagine, but I'm blown away with what you're able to accomplish. It really is amazing that you're able to manage it all and keep doing what you're doing. I will always be a fan of you, Tim. And thank you for also providing tech support from time to time for our people, which, is so valuable because I can't be an expert in everything and I'm not. So.
Yeah. Well, and, neither are we. And that's why we have a great team, to shout out to the NAVA team and to the SoundBox crew that I can go out of town. I can go to DC for a week and still know that the team here in LA is going to keep running the studios and that we have a great team of people. Michelle Haynes and Carson Beck and Paula Tissot and Paul Mercier. And you've been helping facilitate some of that as well. And we've got Christy Bowen in Nashville and Chris Shula in Boston. That these people have been the right people, have stepped up and provided the space. And same thing with NAVA, myself, Karen Gilfrey, and Matthew Parham, who's our director of operations, and our entire board. Yeah. But between all of us, if I can't do it, somebody else steps up and does it. And when somebody else can't do it, I step in and do it. We're here because we always say yes. That was it's the biggest joke with NAVA is that if anybody at the beginning, if Karen or myself or somebody else had just said, you know what, no, I don't think that's a good idea, you shouldn't do it, we all would have been, all right, cool, no big deal, I'll go about doing what I do. But nobody said no, so we all just kept saying yes, and here we are. So
Oh, thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, George.
Always a pleasure, man. I guess I'll see you in Atlanta then.
Yeah, exactly. See you there.
Somewhere else other than Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, yeah, exactly.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.
All right, cool, man. Thanks. See you.
GTT. Not sure if your studio's audio sounds competitive? A sound check by George the Tech removes all doubts and explains the next steps. Audiobooks, podcasts, voiceovers. For content creators, we do it all. New customers get 20% off their first service with a coupon code on your screen.
George the Tech.